C.S. Lewis once observed, "The moment you wake up each morning, all your wishes and hopes for the day rush at you like wild animals. And the first job each morning consists simply in shoving them all back and listening to that other voice, taking that other point of view, letting that other, larger, stronger, quieter life come flowing in." Have you ever found yourself overwhelmed by the chaos of life, desperately seeking peace, but feeling like your prayers are just whispers lost in the noise? This deep, gnawing pain, this longing for a connection that truly soothes your soul, is something many believers experience. Yet the true power of prayer is often misunderstood and underestimated. We approach it casually, distracted by our own thoughts and worries, not realizing that in doing so, we rob ourselves of the very strength we seek. Imagine the power that flows from God's presence when we pray with a heart fully engaged in focused prayer, then becomes more than a mere ritual. It transforms into a lifeline, a channel through which divine strength and wisdom flow into our lives. Yet, how often do we allow the distractions of this world to chip away at this spiritual fortress? How often do we find our minds wandering, our hearts not truly invested in the words we speak to God? This distraction doesn't just weaken our prayers, it leaves our souls vulnerable, exposed to the very fears and anxieties we seek to overcome. But there is hope, a profound and transformative hope. When we pray with intention, when we bring our deepest fears and desires before God with undivided attention, we step into a place of power that goes beyond human understanding. Prayer, in its truest form, is not just a plea for help, it is a surrender, a letting go of the weight we carry, and a trust in God's ultimate plan for us. This is where the transformation begins, not in the absence of struggles, but in the strength to face them with a heart fortified by faith and connection to the divine. So, I urge you to stay with me as we explore this further. Together, we will uncover the mysteries of effective prayer and learn how to unlock its true power in our lives. This journey is not just about learning to pray, it's about learning to live with a heart fully engaged with God, trusting Him to lead us through every storm. If this message touches your heart, please like it and share your thoughts in the comments. Your engagement helps us grow this community of faith and continue sharing these insights with those who need them most. Let's move forward together to discover the next profound truth that God has in store for us. Can I get a shout of praise from you? Consider this: have you ever wondered why some prayers seem to soar to the heavens, while others feel like they barely reach the ceiling? What if I told you that the effectiveness of your prayers depends on the realm from which you operate? Imagine for a moment that prayer is a key, but not just any key, it's one that can unlock a door to a higher dimension, a realm beyond the ordinary, where true power and dominion reside. In the beginning, as outlined in Genesis 1 verse 26, God bestowed upon humanity the authority to rule the earth. This was no small gift, it was a divine mandate, a calling to govern creation with wisdom and love. However, this authority wasn't meant to be exercised from the limited perspective of our earthly existence. To truly tap into the dominion that God intended for us, we must ascend beyond our natural state and step into the heavenly realm, a space that is only accessible through deep, intentional prayer. C.S. Lewis, in his insightful work The Screwtape Letters, presents a stark reality: whenever they are inclined to pray, we must be active. This warning reveals the spiritual warfare that surrounds our moments of prayer. Distractions, doubts, and worldly concerns are all tools that the enemy uses to keep us anchored to the earthly realm. When we allow these distractions to take hold, we engage in what can be termed as praying in the flesh. It's a kind of prayer that is filled with words, yet devoid of true spiritual connection. Our minds wander, our hearts are divided, and as a result, our spirits fail to rise to the level where God's presence dwells. But what does it mean to pray from a higher realm? John 3 verse 31 gives us a clue: he who comes from above is above all. When we enter into God's presence, when we truly fix our hearts and minds on Him, we ascend above our earthly problems and concerns. In this elevated state, we can govern our lives with the wisdom and authority that God has granted us. It is here, in this sacred space, that our prayers become more than mere words. They become a powerful force, capable of shifting realities and bringing heaven to earth. So, I ask you, how often do you find yourself distracted in prayer? How many times have your thoughts wandered to your to-do list, your worries, or your plans? These are the moments when we must be vigilant, for it is precisely in these moments that the enemy seeks to pull us back to the earthly realm. To pray effectively, we must learn to silence these distractions, to focus our entire being on God, and to enter into that higher realm where true power lies. Only then can we exercise the dominion that God has given us and truly impact the world around us. Imagine for a moment someone faithfully attending church services, bowing their head in prayer, yet leaving unchanged, week after week. This cycle continues not because they lack devotion, but because their prayers are devoid of true surrender. C.S. Lewis illuminates this struggle in Mere Christianity, where he contemplates the challenge of genuine prayer, especially in communal settings. He observes that group prayer often invites pretense, as it's easier to conform to the motions rather than engage deeply with God. The essence of prayer, Lewis argues, lies in the renunciation of our own will, submitting wholly to God's purpose. But what happens when we fail to do so? Have you ever wondered why certain prayers seem ineffective? Why they don't stir the soul or alter one's spirit? Lewis offers an answer in the Screwtape Letters, where he notes, their minds are always drifting away from the object of prayer to focus on themselves and their own efforts to pray. This distraction, this inward focus, strips the prayer of its power, transforming a sacred moment into a hollow ritual. Lewis goes even deeper in his exploration of human nature, pointing out that pride is the root of this spiritual disconnect. In Mere Christianity, he writes, the essential vice, the utmost evil, is pride, unchastity, anger, grief, greed, drunkenness, and all that are mere flea bites in comparison. It was through pride that the devil became the devil. Pride leads to every other vice. It is the complete anti-God state of mind when we allow our thoughts to drift toward our own concerns during prayer, aren't we, in essence, prioritizing ourselves over God? This inward distraction is a subtle form of pride, where we place our importance above the divine. Lewis's insight compels us to question our approach to prayer. Are we truly seeking God's will, or are we merely presenting our desires, cloaked in religious language? How often do we let our thoughts wander to personal worries, effectively sidelining the very connection we seek with the divine? By examining our own hearts, we may uncover the pride that hinders our spiritual growth. It's a challenging reflection, but one that Lewis urges us to undertake if we wish to move beyond surface-level faith into a deeper, transformative relationship with God. True prayer, as Lewis suggests, demands more than words. It requires a full-hearted surrender to God's will, an abandonment of self that allows the divine to work within us. Have you ever found yourself struggling to connect with God, despite your best intentions? It's a quiet battle within, where the comfort of the flesh subtly overshadows the call of the Spirit. C.S. Lewis once remarked, relying on God has to begin all over again every day, as if nothing had yet been done. This captures the essence of our spiritual journey. It's a daily renewal, a conscious choice to resist the ease of the flesh and engage deeply with the Spirit. Imagine waking up, knowing the importance of arming yourself with prayer as a soldier in God's army, yet finding the allure of comfort in bed too enticing. You tell yourself that you're praying, but are you truly engaging with God? Or is your heart drifting, half asleep, as the words slip away into the soft haze of drowsiness? This isn't just a moment of weakness, it's a reflection of a deeper disconnection from the vibrant presence of God. Lewis's works remind us that our spiritual life is not merely about avoiding sin, but about the active pursuit of God's presence. He warns us that our enemy, the devil, thrives in the spaces where we are most complacent. The safest road to hell is the gradual one, he writes. The gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts. It's in these quiet moments of neglect, when we allow ourselves to be lulled into spiritual apathy, that we become most vulnerable. So, how do we combat this? How do we ensure that our prayers are more than just whispered words in the comfort of our beds? It begins with recognizing the importance of intentionality in our spiritual practices. Are we approaching God with the reverence He deserves, or are we allowing our flesh to dictate the terms of our relationship with Him? Consider this: what if every time you felt the weight of sleep pulling you away from prayer, you saw it as a signal that something significant is on the horizon? What if that heaviness is the devil's last-ditch effort to prevent you from stepping into God's next move for your life? Instead of yielding to the temptation of comfort, rise up with the determination of a warrior, fully awake and fully engaged. In this spiritual warfare, it's not enough to simply avoid falling asleep during prayer. We must actively choose to stay spiritually alert, to push through the moments of distraction and fatigue, and to meet God with the same fervor that He meets us. For in those moments of true connection, we are not just speaking to God, we are being transformed by Him. In Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis poignantly observes, "The presence of God is the hardest reality to remember and the easiest to forget." This notion of spiritual forgetfulness resonates with many, especially during prayer, where the mind often drifts toward the immediate and tangible distractions of life. But why is it so challenging to stay focused on God, even in moments meant for Him? Is it merely the pull of the world? Or is there a deeper reluctance within us to engage fully with the divine? Lewis challenges us to confront these distractions head-on, recognizing that half-hearted devotion often leads to spiritual stagnation. Consider Revelation 3 verse 15 to 16, where Jesus admonishes the church in Laodicea, "I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish you were either one or the other. So, because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I am about to spit you out of my mouth." This sharp rebuke is not merely about their actions, but the state of their hearts. The Greek words used here, psychros cold and thermos hot, are not just about temperature but about the spiritual fervor or lack thereof that defines our relationship with God. Lewis's writings often emphasize the dangers of spiritual complacency, urging believers to choose between a life fully committed to God or one that openly rejects Him. In his view, to be lukewarm is to sit on the fence, neither advancing nor retreating, and this, he argues, is a far more perilous place to be than outright rejection. Why do we allow ourselves to be content with mediocrity in our faith? What fears or doubts keep us from being either cold or hot? The warning to Laodicea is a call to examine our own lives. Are we truly fervent in our pursuit of God, or have we become comfortable in a lukewarm existence, where our prayers and actions lack the passion that true faith demands? Lewis's insight into human nature reminds us that it is not enough to simply believe. We must be vigilant in our devotion, actively choosing to be either hot or cold, fully committed or consciously distant, rather than living in the dangerous middle ground of spiritual indifference. In essence, Lewis and the Scriptures beckon us to take a stand. Are we willing to be uncomfortable in our faith, to push past the distractions and the ease of lukewarm spirituality, and truly engage with the presence of God? The choice is ours, but the consequences of our indecision could lead to the very spiritual emptiness we seek to avoid. How will you choose to live out your faith today? To experience the profound depth of prayer, one must understand the essence of what C.S. Lewis refers to as praying in the Spirit. This concept transcends the mere act of verbal communication with God. It embodies a complete surrender to His presence, where both mind and spirit are wholly immersed in divine communion. Lewis, in his book Letters to Malcolm Chiefly on Prayer, highlights that prayer is a response to the presence of God in our lives. When we perceive this presence, even in the smallest things, we are truly praying. This perception is not just a fleeting thought or acknowledgement, but a deep-seated awareness that envelops the believer. How often do we find ourselves distracted? Our minds wandering to the mundane tasks that await us, rather than fully embracing the sacred moment of connection with God? In truth, the quality of our prayer life is directly tied to the state of our mind and spirit during these moments. If your thoughts are preoccupied with the concerns of this world, your spirit will wander along with them. Jesus' teaching in Matthew 6 verse 21, "For where your treasure is, There your heart will be also serves as a powerful reminder that the focus of our minds dictates the direction of our spirits. Similarly, Proverbs 23:7 asserts, "For as he thinks in his heart, so is he." These scriptures emphasize the importance of aligning our thoughts with our spiritual intentions. Imagine a believer physically present in prayer, yet their spirit drifts to concerns of the day, the chores to be done, or the challenges to be faced. In such instances, are we truly in the presence of God, or merely going through the motions? Lewis would argue that true prayer occurs only when we allow our spirit to ascend beyond these distractions, fully embracing the presence of God. This type of prayer is not merely about the words spoken, but about the posture of the heart and soul. It is about being in a state where, although physically present on earth, our spirit is seated before the throne of God, participating in a heavenly communion. When a believer reaches this level of prayer, they are not just praying, they are experiencing the divine, allowing God's presence to permeate every part of their being. It is this profound immersion in God's presence that leads to a prayer life that truly gets results. So, the question remains, are you truly present when you pray? Is your spirit fully surrendered to God's presence, or are you distracted by the world's noise? To be the kind of Christian who experiences the fullness of God's power in prayer, you must learn to quiet the distractions, focusing your entire being on Him. Only then can you truly say you are worshiping in spirit and truth, with your heart aligned with your treasure in heaven. In the journey of faith, it is not merely the act of prayer that draws us closer to God's presence, but the depth and sincerity with which we approach Him. C.S. Lewis, in his profound reflections on the Christian life, often emphasized the importance of the heart's posture in worship. He famously stated, "It is in the process of being worshipped that God communicates His presence to men." This statement begs the question, are we truly seeking God's presence, or are we simply going through the motions? It is easy to fall into the routine of prayer without truly engaging our spirit, but Lewis challenges us to examine our intentions and the authenticity of our worship. Jesus, in the Gospel of John 4 verse 24, declared God is spirit, and His worshippers must worship in spirit and in truth. This call to worship in spirit and truth is not a mere suggestion but a divine mandate. The essence of this command is that true worship transcends the physical. It is a spiritual act that demands our full attention and devotion. When our minds are distracted or our hearts are not fully engaged, we are not worshiping in truth, and thus our prayers lose their power. Lewis's writings remind us that genuine prayer is not about the eloquence of words or the fervor of our petitions, but about the sincerity and purity of our hearts. Imagine a scenario where you are in the midst of prayer, but your thoughts are scattered, your heart is heavy with doubt, and your spirit feels distant. In such moments, it is crucial to ask yourself, am I truly in communion with God, or am I merely speaking into the void? Lewis would argue that it is in these very moments of struggle that we must strive to align our spirit with the Holy Spirit, to reach beyond the earthly realm and into the heavenly. He often wrote about the struggle of the Christian soul, caught between the distractions of the world and the call to focus entirely on God. In Ephesians 2 verse 6, we are reminded that through prayer, we are elevated to heavenly places with Christ. This elevation is not just metaphorical but a spiritual reality that places us in a position of authority over the trials and tribulations of life. Lewis's insight into the Christian experience suggests that true prayer is a journey, a movement from the earthly to the divine, from the temporal to the eternal. It is in this divine exchange that our spirit is lifted, and we are seated with Christ far above all principalities and powers. When we pray in this manner, with a heart fully engaged and a spirit attuned to God, our prayers become more than just words, they become declarations of faith that resonate in the heavenly realms. As Lewis poignantly observed, prayer in the sense of petition, asking for things, is a small part of it. Confession and penitence are its threshold, adoration its sanctuary, the presence and vision and enjoyment of God its bread and wine. Thus, when we enter into prayer, we are not just presenting our requests to God, we are entering into His very presence, where we share in the authority of Christ, reigning above all powers and dominions, as Ephesians 1 verse 21 declares. In conclusion, The essence of true prayer lies not in the fervency of our words, but in the sincerity of our hearts. It is about entering the throne room of God, where we are elevated above our circumstances and empowered to speak with the authority of Christ. As C.S. Lewis so eloquently put it, to be in His presence, to be in the presence of love itself, is the ultimate answer to every prayer. Therefore, let us strive to worship in spirit and in truth, knowing that in doing so, we are not only heard but are also transformed by the very presence of God. Prayer is frequently seen as just a one-sided dialogue with the divine, but its essence is far richer and more profound. When we engage in prayer, are we merely reciting words, or are we entering a sacred space where our deepest thoughts and needs are laid bare before God? C.S. Lewis, in his profound reflections on faith, highlights that prayer is not just a matter of speaking, it is a fundamental way of aligning ourselves with the divine purpose. Lewis once said, "I pray because I can't help myself. I pray because I'm helpless. I pray because the need flows out of me all the time, waking and sleeping." This perspective challenges us to consider prayer not just as a tool for asking, but as a means of surrender and communion. In our busy lives, it's easy to overlook the depth of this spiritual practice. How often do we approach prayer with the intention of listening and receiving, rather than simply presenting our requests? Lewis encourages us to think about prayer as an opportunity for transformation, rather than a transactional exchange. Just as a conversation with a dear friend can bring us closer and reveal new facets of our character, so too can our dialogue with God reshape our understanding of ourselves and our faith. Imagine for a moment that you are facing a deep personal struggle or uncertainty. How does the practice of prayer change when you approach it not just to seek answers, but to open yourself to a deeper connection with the divine? Lewis's view invites us to ponder whether we are truly engaging with prayer as a means of aligning our lives with God's will, or if we are merely skimming the surface of what could be a profound journey of spiritual growth. Through this lens, prayer becomes an intimate dialogue that transforms not only our relationship with God, but also our inner selves. It's an invitation to explore the profound depths of faith and to allow ourselves to be changed by the presence of the divine. As Lewis insightfully notes, the act of praying can be an encounter with the essence of God's love and guidance, prompting us to ask ourselves whether we are truly open to this transformative experience. Lewis challenges us to move beyond seeing prayer as a ritual or a request line. He invites us to perceive it as an entryway into the supernatural, where our words carry the weight of divine authority. The Bible describes the reverence of the 24 elders in Revelation 4 verse 1 as they bow before God's throne, and this is the posture we should adopt in prayer. It's a moment of deep reverence and awe, a recognition that we are accessing something far beyond our comprehension. What does it mean to approach prayer with such reverence? Have you ever truly considered the power that is at your disposal when you pray? Too often, we reduce prayer to a list of needs or desires, forgetting that we are entering the control room of the universe, where God's will is enacted and His power is unleashed. Prayer is not a task to be checked off a list, it is a sacred act that brings us into direct alignment with the heart of God. So, the next time you pray, remember that you are not merely asking for help or guidance. You are participating in the divine, stepping into a realm where heaven and earth converge, and where your words carry the authority of the Almighty Himself. How will you choose to approach this profound and holy privilege? In the sacred act of prayer, how often do we neglect to acknowledge the immense authority granted to us through this divine communication? C.S. Lewis, in his profound reflections on faith, reminds us that prayer is not merely a ritual or a request to a distant deity, but an active participation in the very essence of God's will. Lewis once wrote, "I pray because I cannot help myself. I pray because I am helpless. I pray because the need flows out of me all the time, waking and sleeping." This encapsulates the essence of prayer as both a privilege and a responsibility. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by life's trials, wondering if your prayers truly matter? Perhaps you have questioned whether your pleas are heard amidst the vast expanse of divine wisdom. Lewis addresses this profound doubt in his writings, urging us to recognize that prayer is not about forcing our will but aligning ourselves with God's greater purpose. The great thing to remember, he says, is that though our feelings come and go, His love for us does not. Here, Lewis emphasizes the constancy of God's love, despite the fluctuations in our emotional state. Consider for a moment the transformative power inherent in our prayers. When we approach prayer with the understanding of its sacred authority, we invite a transformative dialogue with the Creator. It's a moment where our vulnerability meets divine omnipotence. Just as Lewis explored the idea of surrender in his works, he encourages us to embrace the reality that prayer is an act of surrendering our will to a higher wisdom. Reflecting on your own experiences, do you find that your prayers reflected deep trust in this divine authority, or are they more about seeking immediate relief? Are there moments when you grapple with uncertainty, feeling as if your prayers are but whispers in a storm? Lewis's insights can guide us to shift our perspective from seeking answers to engaging in a deeper, trusting relationship with God. His teachings remind us that in prayer, our role is not to dictate the outcome but to align ourselves with God's infinite understanding and plan. In essence, prayer, as Lewis beautifully articulates, is a sacred space where our limitations meet God's boundless grace. It is both an acknowledgement of our dependence and a profound act of faith in the divine plan. Embrace this authority with reverence and trust, and let your prayers become a testament to your unwavering faith in God's eternal love and wisdom. Consider John 3 verse 31, where it states, "He who comes from above is above all." This verse is not merely about hierarchy, but about the source of our spiritual authority. When we pray, we are not speaking from our limited earthly perspective, but from a position of divine elevation. Our words carry the weight of the heavens, commanding attention and obedience in the spiritual and physical realms. Yet, how often do we allow distractions to diminish this sacred moment? The enemy thrives on diverting our focus, knowing that a distracted prayer is a weakened one. Lewis once said, "We are not necessarily doubting that God will do the best for us, we are wondering how painful the best will turn out to be." This reflection invites us to ponder the seriousness of our prayer life. Do we approach prayer with the reverence and focus it deserves, understanding that in those moments we are engaging with the very throne of God? Protecting our prayer time is not just about discipline, it is about recognizing the solemnity of entering into communion with the Almighty, where our words are infused with the power and authority of heaven itself. Thus, in prayer, we do not merely speak, we command, with a voice that resonates from the highest of heavens. The adversary's relentless efforts to sabotage your prayers are driven by a profound understanding of their power. Have you ever felt that just as you prepare to pray, a wave of distractions crashes over you? This is no mere coincidence, it is a deliberate tactic. C.S. Lewis insightfully remarked, "The war is between the spirit and the flesh." Our daily prayers are not just a conversation with God, but a battlefield where the flesh, representing our fears and distractions, constantly battles the spirit. Lewis's analogy illustrates a crucial point: our prayers represent a direct line to divine strength and guidance, making them a primary target for disruption. When we attempt to connect with God, why do we often find ourselves overwhelmed by trivial concerns or inner turmoil? This isn't simply a struggle against noise, but a profound conflict against forces that fear the transformative power of prayer. Consider this: each time you face these interruptions, what might they be trying to keep you from discovering or achieving? Could these distractions be a sign of the immense potential that your prayers hold? Lewis believed that our spiritual efforts, no matter how small, are significant in the grand scheme of our relationship with God. He stated, "You can make a choice and not be defined by your struggles, but rather be molded by your devotion." Reflecting on these insights, it becomes clear that every distraction is a testament to the strength and impact of your prayer life. Rather than seeing interruptions as mere inconveniences, view them as confirmations of the profound battle being waged for your soul. As you press forward in prayer, remember that you are engaged in a sacred and transformative struggle. This perspective can provide a renewed sense of purpose and resilience in your spiritual journey. When you open your heart to Christianity, an extraordinary metamorphosis takes place. deeply altering your inner self and aligning your soul with a divine purpose. This change is not merely superficial but reaches into the core of your being, reshaping your values, perceptions, and connections with the world around you. Have you ever wondered what it truly means to be transformed by faith? C.S. Lewis, in his profound work, Mere Christianity, eloquently illustrates this transformation as a journey toward becoming the person we were always meant to be. He writes, "You can make something either yourself or it can make itself into you, but God makes you into yourself." This transformation is not about losing oneself but discovering a deeper, truer essence of who we are through the lens of God's love and grace. Lewis also delves into the struggle inherent in this journey. In the Screwtape Letters, he portrays how spiritual growth often involves overcoming significant inner battles. He presents the idea that our natural inclinations can resist this transformation, much like how a caterpillar resists becoming a butterfly. Do you find yourself wrestling with doubts or fears that seem insurmountable? These are not just obstacles but opportunities for deeper growth and reliance on God. The very process of overcoming these struggles can bring you closer to the profound peace that faith offers. Consider how Lewis's insights align with the transformative power of Christianity. He argues that this journey is not about reaching a state of perfection, but about progressively aligning ourselves with God's will. As Lewis famously said, Christianity, if false, is of no importance, and if true, of infinite importance. This statement challenges us to reflect on the profound impact of faith. It is either a guiding force of infinite significance or irrelevant. If we accept its truth, it demands a complete reorientation of our lives. Engage with your own experiences. What transformations have you witnessed in your spiritual journey? How have your values shifted, and what deeper connections have you formed with others? Reflect on these questions as you consider the profound transformation Christianity brings. It is a journey that involves not only personal growth but also a deeper understanding of our place in God's grand design. In embracing Christianity, you embark on a path that not only transforms your spirit but also invites you to participate in a grand narrative of redemption and purpose. This transformation, as C.S. Lewis portrays, is both a profound and deeply personal journey, inviting you to uncover the truest version of yourself in the light of divine love and grace. In John 15, verse 4, Jesus tells us, "If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing." This profound statement underscores the essence of our dependence on Christ for a life of purpose and fulfillment. C.S. Lewis, in his writings, illuminates this concept through his understanding of divine presence. He reflects on our spiritual journey by suggesting that our growth and fruitfulness are intricately tied to our connection with God. Lewis famously remarked, "You can make anything by writing," emphasizing the creative power that flows from being rooted in Christ. Consider this: are you feeling isolated or as though your efforts are falling short? Do you sometimes doubt the impact of your spiritual journey? Lewis's perspective helps us understand that in our moments of doubt, when we feel detached or unproductive, it is often because we are not fully abiding in the divine source. He asserts that true fulfillment comes from a consistent and intimate relationship with God, much like a branch's vital connection to the vine. Reflecting on Lewis's own life, his journey through doubt and faith highlights the transformative power of staying connected to God. In his book, The Screwtape Letters, Lewis explores how the enemy seeks to sever our relationship with God, illustrating the spiritual warfare that often distracts us from our true source of strength. Just as a branch thrives by being connected to the vine, we too find our purpose and vitality in maintaining our bond with Christ. Let this be a moment to ponder: are you actively nurturing your relationship with God, or are you feeling distant and fruitless? The assurance that Jesus provides is not merely about a spiritual duty but an invitation to a deep, life-giving relationship. By remaining in Christ, we embrace the fullness of life that He offers, transforming our struggles into opportunities for growth and our doubts into affirmations of faith. As C.S. Lewis poignantly puts it, we are what we believe we are. reminding us that our true identity and strength emerge from our unwavering connection with the divine.